Be reminded that black men, or the true working definition of black men, has to do with being a protector of black women and children, African civilization, and in your fellow black man. And why this is important is because we know that our whole value system has been turned upside down, so much to the point that when you hear these guys on TV being told that, you know, it's not their baby, they jump up into spontaneous celebration like they won the lotto. And it only makes you consider the fact that we've come full circle, you know, when we used to take pride in the birth of our children. See, many of us forget that in 1950, African people in this country had the strongest family life ever recorded in this country. You had more extended family life and more fathers in the home, you know, than you ever had. And today is just a complete opposite. We have the worst record on family life today, with more than 75% of our families being headed by black women. And unfortunately, the fantasy that the black woman is a superwoman, or that you can raise, you know, children without having an essential part of the family life, the father being there, is just not going to work. You know, it's very interesting because the primary function that I teach in my manhood training classes, really, the primary function of the man is to really be a protector. And that even supersedes his role as a provider. Now, we're very much aware, as the song says, ain't nothing going on but the rent. This song has made black men all acutely aware that they need to be making, you know, some kind of financial contribution to the home. But more importantly, they need to commit themselves to being protectors, because when that father's in the home, the daughter's not allowed to leave that house in full body spandex, you know what I mean, with the crack of her behind showing, you know, to show off her tattoo or all this other stuff. The son is told, you're going to have to turn off that destructive music, you know, you singing Get Rich or Die Trying or whatever the case may be. I'm not coming to visit you on Rikers Island. And he tells his daughter, you're going to put on some clothes because I don't want to see you get raped or hurt or somebody disrespect you or come at you just as if you're just a sex object. So these things are very, very critical in terms of trying to elevate the consciousness of our black men back to their true character, because a lot of times what we're witnessing is a lot of form that is contrary to our true nature, because black men and black women are beautiful, loving, good, and righteous people by nature. And when I see us behaving in ways that is not even cultural for us, you know, I always remind them that that's your form, but that's not your culture. It's interesting, I was talking to some brothers just the other day. These brothers happen to live a homosexual lifestyle, and I was explaining the same thing I was explaining to you. And they were amazed. I said to them that that is the form you're in, not your nature. And when I went on to explain to them, they offered some very, very interesting arguments as to why they have a right to choose the lifestyle that they have. And I said, I'm not even objecting on moral grounds. I'm not objecting about your right to choose your lifestyle. But let's face it, you know and I know that your lifestyle, what you call a lifestyle choice, is really the validation of somebody who molested you, or somebody who was a psychological or physical predator on you. And when I went and started going into that line of reasoning with them, they had to admit that their whole genesis of this behavior really began in abuse. And so what you're doing is validating somebody that maybe loved you in other ways, but then did some inappropriate stuff to you. And as a result of that, you're saying that this is who you are because you don't want to say that this person was bad. And it all starts at an age where you're not really psychologically able to protect yourself. You know, so we are validating molesters because we've had an explosion in homosexuality in the black community that really boggles the mind when you consider that the homosexual lobby says that 1 in 10 people may have a natural proclivity or a natural desire to pursue that homosexual lifestyle. We're running at the rate of approximately 35% between our young men and women between the ages of 9 and 25. I mean, if you look at these kids today, it's nothing to see a 9-year-old, 10-year-old, 11-year-old girl hugged up with another girl, one pretending to be the man, one pretending to be the woman.
I've seen it.
And they see adults. It doesn't even bother them. And this is because something is homosexualizing our children. I always like to remind people that when you're at war, the first way you know that you're at war is you see casualties everywhere, you know? When you look at our population, we're overrepresented in the homeless population, overrepresented in the prison population, overrepresented in the mentally ill population, overrepresented in the underemployed population, always overrepresented in the unemployed population. That should tell you that every system that sustains your life is under attack. And if you look at the fallout in the relationship between the black man and black woman, you can basically see the whole destruction of the whole community just segues from that. That is why my new book which is due to be released in about 4 weeks, is called The True Worth of a Race. And it's based on Mary McLeod Bethune's observations when she was building Bethune-Cookman College. She said that the true worth of a race, it would be based on the character of its womanhood.
Thank
And
you.
essentially, nothing is more true for the black community today when you consider that 75% of the family life is in the hands of women. 75% of the economic wealth of the black community is in the hands of women. And the irony of it is that there's been wholesale war on the black man for years. And now it has gotten to a point where they're really attacking women. You know, I liken it to what happened in the civil rights movement. You know, when black men for the first time in this country declared themselves to be men, they didn't realize that that was an act of war. Because you got to remember, historically, when we were enslaved and brought over here in chains and put on the plantation to work, the white man told the black man that your women and children are my property. And if you interfere with that relationship, I am going to kill you. And the black woman's position was to tell her mate, her slave husband, that look, he can touch my body, he cannot touch my soul. I don't need you to go out there to defend me, because if he kills you, me and the children are going to really be left alone with this abuser. But if you look at what happened from the 1865, the end of slavery, physical slavery, to 1950, you see the reconstruction of black family life. So much so that by 1950, you have the strongest family life in the history of this country. More extended family life, more fathers in the home than any other people have ever achieved in this country. We were family-orientated people. And then you see the dismantling of the black family right at the beginning of the civil rights movement, because black men for the first time started wearing these banners saying, I am a man. And when you say that you are a man in a place where your enemy, your historical enemy, has always told you that you are a boy, because you gotta remember, you can be a 95-year-old, you can be a 5-year-old white man, white boy, saying to a black man who's 90 years old, come here, boy, and he better come. So once we took on the position that we were going to be down with the Black Panther Party and the Nation of Islam and the Civil Rights Movement, and you know, with all those different movements trying to assert black culture, black manhood, you know, they went to work. I mean, they flooded the black community with dope. And I have to say them because the bottom line is that if you study what actually occurred, you know, you can absolutely see that the government, you know, definitely participated in the destabilization of the black community by allowing the flooding of the black community with heroin, and then with crack cocaine. Because we know if this was happening in so-called middle America or white America, it would have been a national emergency, but it was not a priority because we were seen as a potentially subversive force in this country. So they've been coming after us, and at the same time, you know, at the beginning of the 1950s, you have the emergence of the black middle class, because all these African people, more than half the African population of the South, migrated to these northern cities in search of factory jobs that came about as part of the wartime economy with World War II. And as they emerge into these major cities and they start to work for GM and they start to see real money for the first time, because you know whites extended slavery an additional 100 years with the sharecropping situation. You know, the sharecropper never made enough money, and you just got more and more in debt, you know, for your housing, and you go down to the grocery store and sign your name, but he never told you he never made any money. So now we flood into these northern cities and we're causing white flight, and we're congregating and we're working in these factories, and at the same time we start to get cocky. And we start to talk about reclaiming our culture and start to declare ourselves to be men. So what do white folks do? They take the whole manufacturing base of the country and drop it in Southeast Asia, okay? Making the black man thereby pretty much unemployed. And then at the same time, they're flooding the communities with dope, and then they're giving us these FBI-inspired movie documentaries like movies like Superfly. So the bottom line is that we've been under major attack, you know, and I think that even the black women is unaware of how they have used this whole matrix system to turn black women against black family life and against black men. If you look at a movie like The Color Purple, which was put out by the #1 illusionist in this country, Steven Spielberg, he was the director. And this is a guy who produces Poltergeist and Close Encounters and Raiders of the Lost Ark and, you know, E.T., all these are great movies with special effects, and all of a sudden he's making The Color Purple.